the BC3 Amigos. We are back. It's now January, and we're going to have a lot of fun this month. Can you believe it, guys? It is 2025. It's just, oh my God. I'm like,
I thought you were saying that's the temperature, 20 to 25. It is freaking cold.
I'm at 7, I think, or 10 somewhere in New England right now. So I am freezing. My heater is cooking on the floor here, and I think we are all in our offices. But what a great year 2025 is going to be for the BC3 Amigos. We are crazy having fun all around with all of our shows we're going to see us and see us speak and educate you. And we are so excited to get around and be involved with this great community we live in. But I don't know, we were sitting talking, all of us, and we were breaking bread with the new year, and we said to ourselves, what should we talk about for January of 2025? And sadly, we jokingly said, you know what? We love our government. We love the IRS. Let's talk 1099s. And so we all said, let's talk about the 1099. And we thought it would be a great thing because obviously 1099s are due by the end of the month. The 31st, you got to have them out in the mail or email to your vendors. But we thought, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's new in BC. Let's talk about the new features that are out there. What are the new functionalities? What's even coming in 2025 down the road, even more, some of those new features. And all of us have been playing in it diligently because all of our customers combined have to do 1099s, and some are in old version, some are in new version. So let's go round robin. And I mean, who wants to take the first stab? I hate using stab at 1099 discussion.
So here's a question. Are y'all suggesting that people upgrade right now or just use the old way?
I mean, for me, I know time is of the essence. And ironically enough, I'm going to say I love the old way because, as you know, it was easy. It was very simple and bland. It was bland. I'm not saying it was like, wow, look at all the features it does, but it worked and it was fine. And let's get through 2020. Let's file it 2024 1099s and let's worry about the new feature going forward for 2025. Only because it takes effort it takes a lot of effort to make sure you get it right. And it takes a lot of effort to make sure it's even working. So you're going to have to do this in a sandbox because without you testing it and making sure you do it right, you're going to be stuck behind an 8 ball considering you only have 8 more days to go.
On 2024, did you use the magnetic media file?
If you did.
The 1096 for the 1099?
So understand, there is an option out there that asks you when you create this file, is this a vendor's software or is it in-house? And obviously, if you're using Business Central or Nav, this is a vendor's file. And you have to fill out all that information. So the question becomes, who is the vendor? What's their name? And by the way, it will fail if you don't put in a vendor's email and a vendor's contact number. So I reached out to Tom Blaisdell. I'm going to throw some names out here. And I said, hey, Tom, I got somebody who's trying to send this electronic file. Who do we put in down here? And I didn't get an answer for a couple of days because the people were scrambling to say, oh, who's going to take the call? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Nobody wanted it. And unfortunately, somebody drew the short straw, and that's Alexander Totovic. And so you must put his name in there as the contact. He gave a phone number and an email address. But you have to fill that all out or you're not going to get that report. And how many people knew or know how to get that information?
Is that different from last year?
I don't remember last year because every year it's painful. And I only do it once, every time a year. I hate this, like, oh God, now what?
I did it once, maybe, I can't even fathom, probably back in the early teens, 20 teens era. I mean, and so.
I just put mine in a service and say, here's a file. Send them out for me, file the 1096, and done.
Yeah.
And some people actually upload the file. They manually create the CSV file and load it into the vendor to the IRS file. That's painful.
Yeah, I mean, now with all these changes that are coming out where the IRS requires you to register yourself on the 1099 Fire website, you got to register.
Now, do you have to have that just for 25 or also for 24?
I went out there. I didn't say any date. It just brought me there when I tried to sign up and do it as a joke. So I just went, and it didn't tell me. So it was allowing me to do it now. So that would be 2024. So I would assume 2020.
Did you have to fill out that field, Rob, when you did yours?
Which field?
It's the second field, right, Steve? It's the second field when you do magnetic media.
Oh, yeah, because you also have to have you have to register and say, I've got this number from the IRS. So, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So let's talk about like,
let's
we
make
think
it
about
better. What do you want? Push a button.
I don't want what we got, but
I mean,
hey, this is a fun session because I'm laughing more than I normally do.
well, let's break it down. Like, what do we think of the feature in relationship to how it gets installed? So let's start from like feature management now. So now we're going to activate it, and it goes through a series of screens that prompt you with things, and how it was written and what it does and what it doesn't do, or how you interpret it. Because remember something, for the most part, this feature is strictly for people in the United States. Only U.S. people are going to read this. So for all intents and purposes, when you activate it, it's going to start prompting you to install the feature, and then it asks you a series of questions. So right off the bat, if you haven't read anything about this, right off the bat, if you start reading the prompts, I know it confused all three of us. Literally, when we tried this, we were lost in space, and I'm using that not the TV show Lost in Space, but I could be as far lost. I mean, we were so lost, it was not even funny, and it never worked.
So
I followed what I thought was the documentation, and I felt like the documentation told me not to. What is the prompt about? Save the files or something, right? The first one was easy. It's the date. Got that one, right? But then it's like, is it a new setup? Well, it's a new setup for this 1099, but not, it's not a new BC because I've been using it for 10 years, right? And then it's transfer data. So I thought, well, I just want to transfer data. So then I go to the next step, and then it says something about that. Do you want detail files? But if you read the documentation, it kind of says this is going to take up database space. So I'm thinking, no, I don't need that. So, and I didn't want to encrypt my stuff. I don't have that much. I don't care. And the error is out.
So when you guys first said you wanted to talk about 1099s, I was like, oh man, this is going to suck. But you know what? The whole process is tough. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Let's talk about it and let's get this thing fixed.
We do. And I will say, we'll preface it for our listeners here. So just so everybody's aware, the reason why we're talking about 1099s has a there's a double-edged sword to it. One, we want to speak about it, teach you what to do and what not to do. But at the same time, I want you to be aware that we have reported a lot of this, and Microsoft is making changes that we've asked for in conversations we've had on Teams, and we've documented it and everything like that. So hopefully in the upcoming monthly release patches, things will be slowly being changed to allow the our US yourselves, the listeners, people who use the BC software for 1099s, it'll be a little more streamlined with better documentation on how you implement it, because it will be official, meaning you'll have no choice, but it will be implemented I believe it's next year. I think it's 2026. I think it's permanent. That's what it says. I know you could try it now, but I believe
between October and March. It's going to
switch right for the end of this year.
Nice about the
it was really
so. I give kudos to the people who put this together, because I've had too many clients who've gone live and forgotten to put the new vendors in with a 1099 code. And lo and behold, they're at the end of the year and they go, oh, wow, what do I do now? So the whole process to update vendor ledger entries that need to have that 1099, that's pretty nice. I mean, that's
nice. It's called propagate. It's called propagate in the new feature. No, I said that to Microsoft right off. That
Yes.
feature's great. I think when you first look at the vendor card and you went from one field, the IRS 1099 code, to 3 fields, the year, 1099 form, and a 1099 form box, blew my mind, right? Why do I need all 3? And I don't feel like we do in the US. I feel like we really just need the bottom one where we say NEC01. We don't need 2024 NEC, NEC01. We just need NEC01. Very interesting in how it was explained to us. We were shown a 1099. It was actually a miscellaneous 1099. And in 2021, box 13 was, I don't know, X charges, right? I forgot what it was, prepayments or something. Morph into 2022, 2023, it's no longer box 13 like it was in 21. It's box 14. And so Microsoft was like, man, they're changing, IRS, we're going to change it so we can confuse you and make you do it wrong. And then we can find, anyway, we can find
Tell us how you really feel.
Better say that word. Yeah. Anyway, so what they wanted to do is historically be able to say this year, this vendor, this is the code. So it would be in 2021 would have been, miscellaneous 13. In 2023, it would be 2023 vendor NEC 14, right? So literally a user can just change it. Does put the onus back on the users to keep up with their 1099s a little bit, right?
Yeah, and the best part is for all of us who've been around the NAV software and even the early years, we'll even go back to the early BC years. Does everybody remember we used to get like a little notification somewhere around December, maybe January, that there was a form update? It was like this, your partner might have found out about it and told you, or you heard about it and you got like maybe some notification. There's a form update that had to be had to be done. In the early years of NAV, obviously, there were a lot of hot fixes that came out and your partner probably had to process it in NAV in the background. And in BC, it was more of, you probably got there was an update coming out for update form.
Update form boxes, again, right? Isn't that what it said?
Yeah, and what it did was it took what Kim said and it and moved it around. And it was like, what a pain in the you-know-where. And it was like...
Yeah, and it never came out until like the 3rd week in January.
Yeah. So
yes.
As we're listening, as Kim, we're listening to Microsoft and the gentleman who's responsible for 1099s is explaining this. And we're like, it was funny. It was like all of a sudden, it's like, boom, the light bulb went off. Now we get why you built this IRS backbone.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why they gave us a form code, which is interest, dividend, miscellaneous, NEC, and then gave us form boxes, because every one of these has multiple boxes on the form. So now are you telling me I got to identify the box? And yeah, they really are. Yeah, whatever form with the box number on it that you pick, that's the 10, that's where it's going to go. But we don't think about it that way in the US. We think about it as miscellaneous 07, NEC 01. And I the one thing I think they listened to us on, Steve, was don't let us just have that on the vendor card, right? Let us just see that. We don't need to see these other things. They did make it easy to copy from one year to the next. So I can't really complain about it. But when you set up a vendor, now you got to go to set up their 1090. It's not just fill out a field. You got to add it. Of course, Rob makes the point on, if you forget, you just add it at the end of the year. But you know what? It was sad. The vendor 1099 information report's gone.
Yeah, I was not too pleased. And the fact that it was officially eliminated, like you will not find it.
It's not there.
It's not there. But after we heard the explanation, I mean, I was kind of happy. I mean, because though they eliminated the report, they actually gave it to us secretly inside of the of the 1099 form box window page, of course, for the vendor. So we do have it. It is there. It requires 2 clicks to get to it, but you actually do have it. So as you're looking at your form, like NEC, and you call up a vendor, you do get your total, and then you can drill in and see all the purchase payments.
That drill in is nice. When you have your vendor and you want to see why did it get $2,635? I thought it was $2,450, right? You can drill in and see everything that it added up, because before you had to try to figure out from payments and invoices what was what. That's what the details does. If you don't toggle that details on, you don't get that. So that was nice, but we don't have the 1099 report. We did ask them for a page where it would show all the vendors, their 1099 code, and the 1099 amount. People want to see that. They want to check it off.
Yeah, and so hopefully in the future we'll see that on one of our releases.
What, Rob?
Well, I was going to say one of the things they can do right now is use the analyze mode to actually view that. If they open up the vendor ledger entries, and they can do some analysis views from that.
Oh,
yeah, but what are you analyzing? You're analyzing the invoices for those dates?
Well, you can group. Remember, you can set what your sum total is for each of those, so that if you're looking at it by year, you can set that I want to look at these transactions by year, and then take a look at the different codes for the different amounts.
I guess the only problem I have with that, Rob, is what if I had some invoices in dated 24, but I didn't pay them till 25? They don't go on my 1099.
Right. Well, but you can just look at the payments then.
So then I have to now you're making me think.
You actually, no, we can't. You want to know why? Because in the vendor ledger entry table, a payment line is not flagged with an IRS code, only the invoice line. Yeah. So the code in the 1099 routine knows to look at the payment to see if it was applied to in the right year. But the problem is you need payment lines, you need invoice lines somehow to manipulate in the analyze mode, because the routine only looks at the applies to payment year of the invoice within the year. So it becomes problematic. The other thing is, taking what Rob said, because it's cool, is that, one of the things that we heard from Microsoft and what we talked about on the phone with them was, what if you have a bill that comes in from a professional service vendor? It includes their service, it includes some travel that we're going to reimburse them for, but it also includes something else totally unrelated to, but 1099able to a different category, right? So we've got NECO1s, which are non-employee compensation, the reimbursement of travel, which has nothing to do with 1099s, and let's make believe we do dividends, like we're paying them we have to pay somebody a dividend, make believe. Now, as you know, you cannot declare the 1099 box on a purchase line. So there's no place in there to do that. You can, and when you post that document, it only makes one record in the VLE, the vendor ledger entry table. So it's going to pick, obviously, NECO1, because that's the first one it's going to pick. So you'd make a new vendor and but we said that when here in the United States, most bigger corporations will send one 1099 with all their boxes filled out when they're multi-categorized. So therefore, if you're doing like a rental one, you got rent, you've got something with insurance, you got farm crops, so you have to fill in lots of boxes on the miscellaneous.
It's one report. It's one form. Yeah.
So we asked them, is it possible to allow for the record keeping for it to read the different 1099 codes in the vendor ledger detail table to create 1099s, not the VLE table? Is there anything that can be done to streamline this? Because if you didn't, every vendor, maybe by happen chance, dividends, NEC, miscellaneous, just like Kim said, and what Rob was talking about, you'd have all these vendors with 4 forms every time, because you're going to have to create a separate vendor for each one, because you can't create one vendor. And now you're sending 4 forms, and they are, even though we know that the IRS and the company wants one.
It doesn't work right now. They would have to do some redesign to get us there. And I guess I didn't even realize till we had that conversation that people did do that. I know. I think about getting my 1098s for investments. Same difference. It's a 1099, right? And they do boxes. So they give you one sheet of paper and they say, short term, long term, foreign, all that stuff, right? But I just didn't put it together with that was the same thing as a 1099 form. We've always done, here's a miscellaneous that's got rent. Here's a dividend, or I know one of the things on a 1099 miscellaneous is fishing, and royalties. So all of those are different boxes and they could go on one form. We cannot do that right now. And that if we're going to do it and do it right, it would be good to kind of fix the whole thing. That's not coming right now.
So let me ask you a question. And based on what you just mentioned, is it possible to set up 4 different vendors for those 4 different boxes? Purchase orders go to those. The invoices go into those. But we have a single payment vendor so that they're all go to the same vendor. Is that going to simplify the process? Because now you're paying 4 different invoices.
Yeah, but no, because the 1099 information is held at the invoice level.
Right, but I'm saying if you do 4 different vendors for the 4 different boxes and one payment vendor, so you have actually 5 vendors, and you're paying.
So the pay to vendor would have it all, would have all those transactions.
Right, but is it going to segregate that boxes?
It should. Yeah, it should be fine because you're going to have 4 vendor ledger entries of invoice type with different 1099s.
Yeah.
So when it builds a 1099, it's going to build 4 1099s.
Yeah, it will. It'll work because the bill to will get, as it posts from sell to bill to, of course, the bill to will have all the lines of all the different types of box forms, and it'll still work. That's pretty cool. I just realized that.
That's a good idea.
Cool idea.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys? What do you think of? I love the fact that now we can email the 1099 as long as you activate.
That's great.
As long as you turn on your consent and as long as you put an email address, and stuff like that, you now can auto email the document to the recipient or
It's great.
I mean, like, no more printing.
Yeah, but you know how many people are going to say, I got to have a copy?
I really, that was a great feature.
I'm still amazed at how many people say, but I got to have a copy.
Well, but there's a spot in there to print a copy.
Yeah, I know, but the whole thing is this is supposed to be paperless.
Yeah, we're going to cut down more trees.
But I will say, so on the thing when we set it up where it has that copy, what is it called? Copy B, copy C or something, I think it's called, in the columns. If we do check it and we are emailing it, it will send them number of, I think, because I know if you say copy, I think if you email it, it's going to send them multiple copies because on the very top of the document, it does say the word copy B, copy C. If you want it sent.
I remember seeing that, yeah.
And I still think
but they're going to need, theoretically, the government doesn't recognize that, but, theoretically, people who still, are there people who still file paper returns? I mean.
Probably.
Because you need it.
But you've never included 1099s on a paper return.
That's true.
Only your W-2.
Are you sure back in the day, I seem to remember stapling a whole bunch of crap to the 1040.
You might be right. The other thing I was going to ask about is making adjustments. Do you think the new feature does a better job of adjustments than the old one?
Ironically enough, I'm going to say I feel it's the same. I know this sounds really ridiculous. But remember in the old way, we all used to log in and you went to your the vendor and you click, I'm making an adjustment and you put you type how much of an adjustment you're going to make in, and that was added to whatever it found in the VLE table, and that was your adjustment. And here I'm thinking it's the same thing. It looks the same, different page, different location, because now we're using IRS reporting period as the basis for my year. But it still looked the same because I was clicking on it and then it said make an adjustment for this vendor that I was clicked on. So it kind of looked the same, just a different home.
What
Maybe.
I tell you, I think one of the big drawbacks that is having to go to each 1099 document, release it, each one. I just talked to somebody right before this call who has 450.
Oh,
Only 450. I have something with 1,000.
Okay, you got to go release it and email it one at a time, right? There's no bulk actions. You got to fix that, Microsoft, right?
yeah, that one, that's painful. I mean, I never even thought about that, because when you're on the form doc, if you don't release it, you're right, you can't send it because it's not released. It's like a pending state. Not that you're adjusting it or anything like that, but yeah, if you're ready to send email, which is sending the form you can't do that unless you release the form doc page, and it's ready to go. And it's a restrictive thing. Wow, yeah, that's painful in and of itself. Plus, I wish there was a way on the list page where you have the list of what's the page called? The page before it. I can't remember the name. I think it's the doc page or something like that when you're drilling in to get to the vendor. But that page that actually has all of them on it, and it lists out the vendors within.
Have a way to like we do everything else, select more, release.
Yes.
Yeah.
Simple things like that. Select more, click release, and just
then I'll go. Yeah.
Let the system do the job. But hopefully they kind of can attack that in the next couple of months as they're making updates to this.
Yeah, I think we'll get some improvements before October, which is good.
Yeah.
I know there was some comments early on in the year, but I felt like they just targeted one thing about it doesn't work without really diving into how you make it work, right? I know I did a blog and then I updated the blog. By the way, it's on the BC3 Amigos LinkedIn channel. We haven't talked about that yet, but we have that new LinkedIn channel. And Steve, thank you for helping look at that. I didn't talk to Rob because I knew he was mad about 1099s. But we worked on that, and after talking to Microsoft, it was helpful to kind of put some insight in there. And so I posted a new version out last night. The first version, guys, got over 2,100 views.
Wow.
Because nobody knows about this 1099 stuff, and I feel like the documentation's a little tough, right? They document it, but they don't explain the whole process very well.
I actually would hope, and I know this is probably going to be a no. The answer is probably no, but for this one thing, because this feature is really truly meant for the United States, and being that people who've been around this so long, and we do this year after year, and the whole bit, we know this better than others, as one would say, meaning people in other countries who've never done this before is what I'm getting at. But maybe they could take, because of the fact that the blog that you put out there, I mean, the fact that 2,100 people plus are looking at it, plus the update that's coming out that you just recently did, it really does break this down into plain Jane. I hate using the word English, but I'm going to say it, plain Jane English. And it takes basically the process from when you turn on the feature all the way through it. It tells you, why did we change this? Why did Microsoft change that? It talks to you about, where do you go to do this? Where do you go to do that? How do you send the email? How do you set it up and send the email? And then, of course, we haven't even spoken about this, but at some point the feature's going to come out that transmit it. You're going to transmit now the 1099s permanently to the IRS using the 1099 Fire account that you have to set up, and it's there. You can set it up and set up the Fire and get that through. I know that I think there was a bug in it. Maybe I'm wrong about that now, and maybe it's been all fixed. But this transmission part, I think there was something wrong with it recently, but I think they were fixing it at the time.
But you're making a good point, and I know that we are getting the ability to have some input and getting good response from Microsoft when we say something about documentation. I get frustrated with the documentation when I start to read how to install and then it's a link to go somewhere else, right? Do I do that link or do I have to go do that link and then come back? Do all those things? Come back here and then you go down a little bit more and there's another link to go do something else. So I'm always like, are you just trying to give me this to say, hey, if you don't know how, am I supposed to do it first? Is it a prerequisite? Yeah. That's why I try to do the blogs in. Here's what you got to do to start. Here's what you got to do next. Because I think that's what people need. And I wish Microsoft would look at it more like that than, and they do a lot of documentation. It's good. I don't mean that badly. I just find for the typical user, it's hard to follow sometimes. And it's not just Microsoft, it's other people too.
So Kim, what happened to more assisted setups? This would be great if we just had the assisted setup that just walked us through that process.
And I think it tries to do that in that first part, but that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it should carry you through.
They should have. Rob, I think Rob's got a great point here when you think about it.
Yeah.
What if, at the end when you're on that last screen and they ask you collect detail. So that in and of itself, I think that message should be nixed. That should be always true. Hide the choice. And I know this sounds funny. Originally, we said we thought that was a data thing because that's what the thing said. It was
well, that's what it says in the documentation if you read it.
And here's a funny thing: who cares about data space when you're in the cloud and you're not using much space anyway? It's like, what are you talking about? A centesimal megabyte amount of space where you're going to do this? And it's like, come on. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's one thing we shouldn't be caring about because this is an IRS thing. It's important. We have to make it right. It should always be set to true. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's number one. So after you click next, you know how the next thing happens? It says you're finished, right? It did, it magically did all of its job. Well, why can't you just immediately, instead of saying next finish, why couldn't you have jumped right into the form setup? And let's get all the forms set up, right? Why couldn't you have gone in and we do the vendors and get the vendors set up? So prompt the page. Would you like us to take the information from all your vendors, all 400? Rob's got 1,000. You've got 400 at a customer. I've only got 50 at one customer. Why not just take all these things and type in the year 2024, which was already set up because you had to answer the question in the first place, and set up all of our vendors. And it sets the whole thing up. And now,
wait, how's it go?
I like how he's consistent about that.
But why not? I mean, Rob's got. I mean, that's a great point.
It's a great point, and it's something that you just listening to you. I just realized this is a whole nother setup for implementations.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We used to just make it part of the vendor import. Oh no, not now.
Nope. Now you're
going to have a separate tab in your spreadsheet for who's 1099able, and you got to fill that out.
Yeah, because think about it. Not now.
That's a table.
You can't edit the vendor card because it's all grayed out now. You have to go to the IRS card and work your way backwards to the vendor card. Why couldn't you? And if they did, they put one button on the IRS. You type the year. You put a button that says set up every vendor, and literally all you had to do was just run through.
But you don't want to set up every vendor.
No, not every.
No. I got an idea. If you set up, so one of the things that you could do is, use the vendor posting group as a 1099 vendor posting group, and then put the filter on 1099 vendors, and it's automatically set up for just those vendors.
I actually had a client I was looking at today who'd done just that. They put vendor-1099 on all their 1099 vendors.
Oh, what a cool idea.
Yeah.
I mean.
But this way you can filter.
There's got to be ways to streamline. There has to be a way, like Rob said. There must be. All you have to do is just think harder. I mean, you're adding a whole layer of complexity to this that just was unnecessary, and we could have automated the whole thing and do more of a one and done approach. At least for people coming from older VC and NAV older VC versions, I'm talking about. Then you could have completely automated it. If you're brand spanking new coming into the system, okay, I get it. You've got to do one vendor at a time, and then in the future is easy. You just get copy, you're done. But Yeah, if because
It complicated it. This whole details thing, I get it, but I don't know why we need it. If you're going to go through my vendor ledger entries and say these are all the things that are reportable for 2024 for this 1099 form box, and I've got, let's say I had an invoice that didn't get paid this year, so why don't I move that forward to 25 and just have 24 and all the ones that are going to be on the this year's 1099 and fix my vendor ledger in those fields? Then I don't need this whole other details thing. And then I say database space. Not that it's I don't know how you do that.
Hey, going back though to the vendor that has multiple different, like some of it's 1099 and some of it isn't. Why can't, when it posts, you can edit the 1099 amount field. Why can't the system automatically look at what's 1099 and filter that out?
Well, it does. I'm not sure I follow what you want it to do. It does do that, doesn't it?
Well, if I've got an invoice, the vendor ledger entry only has one amount. Does it filter?
Oh no,
the propagate thing. It does. Okay. It should go back to the invoices. Check what's 1099able is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah. And put in the 1099. It should. But I know when you post today, like if I go in and have 3 lines and 2 are 1099 and 1 are not, the one line in the VLE under the column called 1099 amount will only be.
But the propagate will put the whole invoice in there. And it really should. I think that's an enhancement to that propagate that would really make it perfect, right? Is it not only did it just populate them from the invoice, but it went and read the invoice and picked up the lines that are 1099able. Yeah.
Right. And I would have thought it would have been harder for them to change the posting code to do that and get it right than it would be to change the propagate function. I think it's easy to make that change to the propagate.
And they
could fix it.
I mean, it is. I mean, because the detail is there. I mean, it's just sitting right there. The vendor ledger detail has all that information. It knows the lines. It's not hard to read. It might take an extra couple of evolutions in the propagate functionality. Yeah, that thing. That's going to be the new one. BC3 Amigos.
We'll come up with our own little thing. I guess, my concern is not to toot our own horn, but we've been doing this a long time and we struggled with it, right? So I really worry about people I haven't heard from, who are out there. Probably they're just doing 1099s the way they have done them in the past. Or they saw, new 1099 and they activated it and now they don't know what to tell people, right? That's kind of what happened with this person I was just on the phone with. They can't get the magnetic media to go. And for these 450, I said, look, print them out, upload them to one of these sites that'll take and do them for you and do the magnetic media and the 1096.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out to our website now and I'm going to post a picture of how to fill out that form for the Microsoft side. So that, hey, by the way, advertising.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Oh, the other thing is this person I was talking to is on-prem.
Oh. And
she said the form that's coming out on-prem for magnetic media is garbage. And I said, well, did you update your objects? What version are you on? Oh, we're on the current. Did you update the objects? Well, that wouldn't cause anything. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what? So I sent her back to look at that. But yeah, so because you and I looked at it, Steve, and we followed it down through the IRS specs and it looked good. Did you use it? Did it upload?
Mine would have uploaded if I did it, even though I don't have I'm not going to put it up to the IRS. I don't want it to send it to nobody, but it looked fine.
Did yours upload, Rob?
So here's what happened. I was working with a client and I said, hey, I've got to look at, because I didn't know who to put in for the contacts. And I said, it's going to take me a day or two. and they decided they didn't want to wait. And so they manually fed the CSV files out there. But then when I ran it, because you can run it and just preview it, it looked like it would go great, because we were looking at it. We previewed it and it was great, except that it was airing out because we couldn't get the information.
Because those fields. Post that link, that here's how you fill out the magnetic media form. That'd be great.
You and I, Kim, you and I were looking at that the other night. We were looking at the file, the different line numbers, the A.
Yeah, you put your name in and all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm not putting my name on that form. IRS better not be calling me.
But I will say something funny, and I think you mentioned it, Kim. When this first came out, I mean, you saw a lot of people posting things, and they said it's broken. And I think the irony now, looking at it in hindsight, is that it kind of wasn't broken. It's just that nobody knew how to use it to fill it out, to make it work in its current state, because, it worked. I mean, you can actually use it. It will work.
Yeah. It goes back to what Rob said. If we'd had a more comprehensive assist edit,
it would have worked.
I think that would have helped.
All the questions
but you gotta go through the documentation. I tell you what I think may help too, and I hope to see Microsoft use this more, is their what do they call it? The cooking.
Oh, the cooking classes.
Yeah, where they're doing like little 4-minute tidbits on different things.
In the cooking class, the how-to cooking classes.
But those are great because they're actually showing the steps in the system. So, and they're out there on a YouTube channel for people. It's a shame they didn't have one for this, but I've learned a lot of the new features by going out there to YouTube and seeing some of the Microsoft things, then taking it back. Now, unfortunately, they show it in a very limited context. So when you start to do it, it's a whole lot of other things come up that they don't show you about, but at least it gets you started.
Hey, Kim, going back to, the assisted setup and what you were talking about earlier, and Steve, you were saying, hey, just hide the field so that it automatically does that. Why, when that report is out there, they already know if they've got the update, who else is running this. If you're in BC, it's going to be a vendor software. Why isn't that already filled out anyway? Why isn't that hard coded in there?
Oh, that's true. The word Microsoft, it should be Microsoft software, their address in Seattle. I mean, all that information should be there.
They know that.
That's so true. Why does it say in-house developed? No, we're running Business Central.
Yes.
That's a good point. That's hilarious. I never thought of that.
I filled it out myself manually, and I'm sitting there going, and I didn't even think about the fact that it's coming from the. Why can't the BC system fill in Microsoft by itself? Because who else would you put in there?
Oh my gosh,
that's true.
That's really funny, Rob. What is this? The big thing now is we need some common sense things.
I think everybody should put the word. Yeah, I think everybody should. From now on, if you're confused about that answer and you don't know who to put there, just put the BC3.
Oh no.
No, go to our website, and I'm going to have that in there. I'm going to put that out there tonight.
All right.
So let's talk about that. Everybody, we're pleased to announce for 2025, we came out with a new LinkedIn page just for the BC3 Amigos. We'll publish obviously our podcast there. We'll publish even the cooking class from Microsoft we put there when the new ones come out. We'll publish different things of training advice, some of our blogs and stuff. Anything we do, if we're going someplace, you want to see us, we'll be there. Obviously, upcoming conferences we'll publish there as well. If you need to contact us, certainly you can do that, and we'll get messages from you. By all means, they'll come in. So we'll have all that information there, inclusive of our own LinkedIn accounts that all three of us have. Hopefully soon the BC3 Amigos website, the www will be up and running. We're just trying to build it fast and furious, but we are busy people, so time is not on our side, especially after year end when we're pulled in for all the accounting questions that people want to tap us on. So that's one great announcement. So please join us, subscribe to us, get out there and on the YouTube channel, subscribe to us, as well as visit our LinkedIn page all the time and see what's new. Couple of other great things to talk about. We've got this month of February that we're now turning into February. We've got a couple of road shows that are coming up. I know there's a road show coming up in Atlanta, Georgia. I believe in the month of February. There's February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Down in Texas.
Dallas has one. I think. What date's Dallas?
Kim's is on the 18th. They moved
18th.
that.
18th, and then we have a Denver one like a week or so later. I can't remember the exact date. So like the 20th, somewhere in the 20th or high 20s.
18th and 20th, yeah. Tuesday, Thursday.
Thursday. There's a couple of there's one in Tampa, I believe, coming up too. Is it a road show in Tampa coming up? I don't know the exact date. There's a couple of meetups coming up regionally. There's one in March in Philadelphia area for a Doug Meetup Regional Conference in the month of March. We'll get the dates out when we have them. We'll try to talk about them on the next podcast in February. And I know they've got a couple of other ones regionally later on in the year and stuff like that. And then, of course, April begins the major conference season. Our first major conference is Directions North America, where the partners get together in the ISVs and talk with Microsoft about the product going forward. In May, we've got Dynamics Con in Chicago this year. Phenomenal event if you can go to it. If you haven't signed up or registered and you're looking for discount codes, you can always send us a message and we'll find you one. If I don't have one available right now this second, but we'll try to get you one to hopefully we can find one for you. And in June, let's see, there's nothing right now in June. And then of course, September, October, we've got our Summit North America event back in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando. And then of course, Directions EMEA, which is overseas, will be happening in Poland this year. That's in November. And there will be a days
Don't you have a code for one of these?
Summit. We have a BC3 Amigos code. Actually, if you go to Summit and you're looking for 10% off, if you watch this video, it'll be part of the introduction. When we play back this video, there'll be a BC3 Amigos code. You can certainly go and get a 10% off on registration for you to the Summit North America event. And again, we'll try to see if we can we'll do the same for Doug. I'll get in touch with Doug and we'll see if we can get a discount code for them as well.
And if the earlier you sign up for Summit, if you want to go, you get those early bird prices and you still get the 10% off. So don't wait, right?
Yeah, don't wait. I mean, there's so much going on in 2025 this year, gang, and hopefully we'll be around road showing from Denver to Dallas to wherever, you'll probably see our faces in many places as well as the podcast. Hopefully you saw our recording in December with Kenny, and you'll obviously be watching this one here. Next month, we're going to look for another amazing community I want to call him volunteer or a community person that actually gets involved with BC, and we're going to get together and obviously have one. We've got a lot of people who reach out to us saying they'd love to be on our podcast and talk about themselves, talk about the community, talk about why they're even in this space. So we're going to have amazing fun next month, having another visitor to our podcast, and look for the future as we go into probably not next month, but hopefully in the month of March, look for more educational podcasts whereby we will educate you and probably do some show and tell versus just us sitting here going like that. We'll do a little show and tell and we'll show you what BC is all about and make it more educational. So that's it I think that's it for January. It's been a kickoff new year, and I'll say clink to the champagne and stuff like that.
I'll say stay warm, everybody.
Don't forget stay warm. The National User Meeting in February.
Thank you.
Also is, every month that comes up, and there's 2 educational sessions, as well as keeping you abreast of all these things that are coming up. It's hard to keep up with. There's so much.
There's a lot coming up, and hopefully as we do we'll put our discount codes, what we've got on our podcast. We'll flash them up in the recording Maybe hopefully next month we'll have it. Maybe we'll do a show and tell. We can bring up a list of podcasts, and then we can bring up a list of road shows, meetups, national. So what we'll do is maybe as we start that next month, we'll bring it up maybe as the last slide. We'll say what's new and here's our codes. That way people can see them, as well as during our intro of our podcast, we'll keep showing our codes and events and stuff like that. So we'll make sure that that's happening while we're editing the podcast.
Awesome.
I can't think of anything else, guys.
Good start to 2025.
I think it's a great start to 2025. I mean, I'm freezing my butt off, but what else is new up here in the Boston area? And you guys are in Texas and probably much warmer than us. And
it's been in the 20s every night. What are you talking about?
well, I got my temperature is called goose, and I'm not talking Top Gun here. Okay, I mean, it's freezing here.
And Rob's,
once you get cold, it's cold. It doesn't matter whether it's And in my mind,
true.
40 is cold.
Well, that's what we call winter in Texas.
40. 40 is shorts weather up here. It's like if it was 40 and 50, I'd be like happy as a clam right now.
Well,
it ain't 40 and 50. Nuh-uh.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right, guys. We will see you in February.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.